All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I think most everybody has joined the session at this point, but let's go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is everything you need to know about the reopening of Ginnie Mae's digital collateral program. My name is Tim Renner, and I will be moderating our panel discussion for today. I am a manager and counsel for Falcon Capital Advisors, which is a Virginia-based business advisory firm. We have been involved providing support to the Ginnie Mae digital collateral program ever since its inception, and we're very excited to be with it at this critical phase. During today's webinar, we're going to be covering some foundational aspects of the digital collateral program, as well as discussing several updates that Ginnie Mae has recently made to the program. Toward the end of the webinar, we will open up to any questions that you might have for our panelists. Since there are so many of you in attendance today, we have gone ahead and muted your microphones. So if you have questions, please submit them using the Zoom Q&A feature, which is just at the bottom of the screen, kind of off to the side a little bit. Like I said, the Q&A portion will be after we've had the majority of the session of my asking questions to the panelists. But don't wait until that time to start submitting your questions. You can do so throughout the webinar, and then when we get to that portion at the end, I'll review them and we'll answer as many as we can. If we do not get to your question today, then we will be reaching out to you after the webinar at some point to follow up with you directly. So with those housekeeping items out of the way, why don't we proceed to introducing our panel of esteemed experts. So first, we are joined by Lynn Chandler. She is Ginnie Mae's Director of the Digital Collateral Program. And also with us is my colleague, Rebecca Perkovich from Falcon Capital Advisors. She is Falcon's project manager for its team that supports the digital collateral program. So Lynn and Rebecca, thank you both very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
So let's kick things off with just a little bit of background on the program and an initial question for you, Lynn. So as background, the digital collateral program is Ginnie's program for the securitization of pools of loans consisting of e-mortgages. The program initially launched back in July of 2020 with a limited window for Ginnie Mae issuers and custodians to apply to participate as e-issuers and as e-custodians respectively. The program is set to reopen to new applicants this month on June 20th. The program requirements are detailed in the Ginnie Mae Digital Collateral Program Guide, or e-Guide for short, which was just updated this past month, and about which I want to spend a significant portion of today's webinar discussing. So to kick things off, Lynn, perhaps you can give us a little bit of information about the success and progress of the digital collateral program thus far.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim. I want to thank Falcon for hosting this webinar today. They have been an invaluable partner to Ginnie Mae as we evolve our digital collateral program. They provide great experience and policy or perspective on the policy decisions that Ginnie Mae is making as we grow and expand. So thank you. And as you mentioned, digital collateral program is Ginnie Mae's program for the securitization of e-mortgages. I know we have different levels of familiarity with the program in our audience, so I will just add that the definition of an e-mortgage is a mortgage loan for which the promissory note is an eligible e-note that was signed electronically on an e-closing platform and registered with the MERS e-registry upon execution. And if there are other terms that we use today that you'd like clarification on, please take a look at Ginnie Mae's Digital Collateral Guide, or e-Guide. There's a glossary where you'll find everything that we talk about today. We securitized our first e-note in January of 2021. So we're just over a year into this program, and we've received some great feedback from our participants and those who are not participating yet on what they would like to see in the program and how it's working for them. I actually just recorded a podcast with some of our current participants that'll be ready shortly if you'd like to hear more about that as well. We currently have 12 fully approved e-issuers. 3 e-custodians and 1 e-subservicer who've collectively helped us to securitize over 8 billion in e-notes as of month end. As you can see from the slide, we originally had 28 e-issuer applications. So there were organizations that were excited about the possibility of participating in the program, but weren't fully operationalized or didn't have the right relationships in place with e-custodians or warehouse lenders to make their participation fully feasible at that time. Now that we're due to reopen our program on June 20th, we're excited to welcome a new round of applicants into the program. We hope you'll join us.
Excellent. Yeah, it seems like there certainly was a lot of initial interest, and I anticipate that there will be a lot of applications coming your way soon, Lynn. So I'm glad that you also you reminded everybody definitionally what we mean when we talk about an e-mortgage, and I think it's important that in this webinar, we don't assume that everybody is fully up to speed on all the ins and outs of the program. So I wanted to ask, for those who might not be as familiar with the program and some of its requirements, but are considering applying to participate either as an e-custodian or an e-issuer, could either you or Rebecca talk about the basic eligibility requirements of the program and onboarding process for e-issuers and e-custodians?
Yep, thanks, Tim. I'll take that one. So as we think about creating an e-mortgage, as Lynn mentioned, you do need to be able to create and close an e-note, and subsequently to closing it, you need to be able to vault it and register it on the MERS registry. So all of those pieces of technology, the tech stack for creating e-notes are very important, and that's why they're outlined in the Ginnie Mae e-guide. The e-guide does have the requirements for the technology, and you should make sure that whatever technology solution providers you choose to complete those 3 tasks meet those requirements. In addition, Ginnie Mae in the e-guide also mentions that they will allow for e-vaults, or they consider e-vaults that are listed on the GSE e-mortgage technology lists as qualified e-vaults for the digital collateral program. So that's the tech stack that is needed for an e-issuer, obviously originating an e-note. For an e-custodian applicant, they just need to make sure that they have a qualified e-vault that is integrated with the MERS e-registry. Just a couple of other things to note about the technology, and I mentioned that the e-vault for the custodian needs to be on the MERS registry, but that's the same for the e-issuer as well. Both applicants should go through the MERS registry integration process and be fully familiar with how to transact through their vault with the e-registry. In addition to that, e-issuers also need to be participants on the MERS system, as there is a requirement that all e-mortgage loans both be on the MERS system and the MERS registry. And finally, if e-issuer has the aspirations to do the full digital, fully remote closing, there are standards also outlined in the e-guide that you would want to make sure that your RON provider is able to comply with. And I would think that the most important of those is that the RON provider can comply with the MISMO RON standards. So that's the technology piece. Once you have the technology piece in place and you have some of that experience on the e-registry, the next phase would be to submit your application to the program. And so as we know, the program window is opening up now or shortly. And so we want to make sure that you have the checklist, I guess, in order to complete that application. So you need to come with your e-note experience and be able to outline the controls that you have in place when executing and closing e-notes. And of course, as I mentioned, make sure that you have your e-registry experience and have your integration completed. In addition, you need to identify either already approved e-custodian, which Lynn had mentioned there are 3 of, or have worked with a custodian that's also interested in applying to the program. In that manner, you could apply together to the program and coincidentally receive approval, and if both meet all the requirements. After receiving once you submit your initial application, you would receive your conditional approval to the program. And that conditional approval letter is going to have the steps in order to receive final approval to the program. And those steps outlined are going to be the test transactions, and that's going to be the next step in the process. So there are a few test transactions that are required. It's not overly onerous. You will need to submit 11706 and corresponding e-notes in your test environment to Ginnie Mae. And that's going to include both registering a test e-note on the e-registry test environment, as well as delivering. You would go through the same flow that you plan to do in production. So you're going to deliver a copy of that e-note to Ginnie Mae and your e-custodian. Both need copies. The e-custodian is going to be put in location, and then Ginnie Mae is going to be in secure priority. And your e-custodian, whether you're applying with a custodian or one that's already a participant in the program, is going to review the 11706 against your submission, and then work from there to correct any errors until everything is correct, and then final approval can be granted. A couple of components of the final approval letter. The most important component is going to be the e-issuance authority that's allotted. And so e-issuance authority is going to be the number, and I'll say initial here, the number of initial e-notes that will be allotted for delivery to Ginnie Mae. And that is the last step in approval.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a lot of great information, Rebecca. I really appreciate it. And I want to ask a follow-up question, which I think maybe this is more better directed to Lynn. Something you had said there, Rebecca, about the e-issuance authority, about initial e-issuance authority. I think was the term you had used. Lynn, I'm sure if you haven't gotten this question yet, you probably will. What should an e-issuer that has received a e-issuance authority from Ginnie Mae do if it thinks it might exceed that authority and need to be able to deliver additional e-notes to the Ginnie program?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. I have talked with a lot of our current participants about how e-issuance authority works. In some ways, it's very similar to commitment authority that we use in our traditional Ginnie Mae program. So, you know, it is theoretically possible that your issuance authority would be restricted if you have a lot of NOVs, which I know none of our issuers have right now. You're all on your best behavior. And, you know, or if you were in a financial turmoil or going through a transfer of control, you know, there are reasons we might limit your e-issuance authority. But by and large, it's really just a planning tool for us in the digital collateral program. It's not meant to be something that restricts your workflow or prevents you from growing in any way. So if you are, you know, you'll be granted an initial allotment of e-issuance authority based on our conversations and your other financial outlook. If you think that's not enough, or if your program is growing, you want to scale up, it's very simple to do. Come have a conversation with me. The more information you can give me about your projected growth, the easier these requests will be to approve. I mean, we approve them in 24 hours. So we're not looking to impede you. We're just looking to have information that helps us plan our program, make sure there's, you know, good space in the eVault for you, no matter how big you want to get. So, you know, we don't have any restrictions on space right now. We don't have any, there are no, you know, I've heard someone say that there were caps. There are no caps. It's really primarily a planning tool. And so, you know, help me with that information and we'll help you to grow too.
Excellent. I'm sure that eases some concerns for current participants as well as those that are planning to apply. So basically the message is just open the lines of communication with Ginnie Mae and any potential issues can be worked out on the e-issuance authority front. Absolutely. All right. Something else I wanted to circle back on here is I know we had said there's currently one subservicer that's approved for the program. I see on the slide here, it talks about applications for subservicers. Could you talk about perhaps like how the requirements of the program specifically apply to subservicers?
Sure, absolutely. So subservicers also can apply to the program. One of the requirements for subservicer is that they have to be an active Ginnie Mae issuer. Other than that, largely, well, this is the same for e-issuer applicants as well. They're largely the same requirements for e-issuers and subservicers. They can choose to apply at the same time with their e-issuer client, or could apply separately. Either way, the test transactions are going to be a little bit different for a subservicer, because we'll need to make sure that the whoever the e-issuer will be able to add that subservicer and remove the subservicer. So we would do a couple of transactions identifying that that capability, as well as processing the applicable transactions on the Mersey registry. So that's going to for servicers, that's modifications and assumptions and all of the deactivation types. And a quick note that the subservicer can be listed in either the subservicer or